So it is back to school season 2024. So do you know what that means? You're getting bombarded by the top 5 back to school lists from all of your favorite social media influencers, because all the companies are giving higher commission to do it. But that's not what this video is about. It's for all of those educators out there that have that one drum that has been completely ignored in the back of their band room for decades, and they're probably ready to throw it out. So in this Snare Saturday video, you're gonna get to see how you could take a drum that's in that situation, maybe looking a little something like this, and how you can turn it into something that looks like this. Yo, what's going on everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video, I'm gonna be bringing back to life a late 60s Ludwig Supraphonic that was in a school. Now before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Now, whether you are a music educator or not, if you are in a public school setting, we all know funds are super limited. And that means, especially with music equipment that is pretty expensive, it has to have a really long shelf life. So when it comes to drums and percussion, a lot of stuff at this point is going to be from possibly the early 50s, but definitely from the 60s, 70s, even the 80s. And we all know that Ludwig drums from that era are really sought after at the moment because of how great they sound. And we also know that Ludwig was one of those brands that you saw all over schools. So the backstory with this Supraphonic, it was at the Philadelphia High School for Girls, also known as Girls High, and was a drum that wasn't being used. As a matter of fact, it was one of the drums in the back of their storage closets in the band room. And since it was time for them to start to update some of their inventory, they were trying to see what they could do with this equipment that wasn't being used. So we decided to take this drum and bring it back to life so it can be playable again. Because unfortunately, there are times as an educator where you're not gonna have the money to just go out and buy new equipment. You're gonna have to make do with what you have. So I figured in this video, it would make perfect sense to show you how you can easily bring the drum back to life if it's in a condition that looks a little something like this. Now, like I said before, this is a late 60s Ludwig Supraphonic. It is the 5x14 model, also known as the LM400. Now this is a chrome over aluminum Supraphonic. It is not a chrome over brass Supraphonic, which is also known as the Supra Ludwig, the predecessor to the Supraphonic. And it's pretty wild to think that some of these drums were placed in school settings. But it's also pretty rad because they're an amazing drum and you can bring them back to life. So I should just stop talking and rambling and let's get this thing over to the bench so we can bring it back to life. All right, so let's go ahead and take this top hoop off real quick, which is just secured by the one tension rod that we have there. So this drum is, I saw the stamp earlier, which is in there. It's a little faded, however. It's October 31st of 1967. Hey, that's cool. You might not be able to see it because of the glare. Let's go ahead and turn that light down. There we go. So right in there, it says October 31st, 1967 is the date stamp on it. So it's a decent drum. It is a late 60s Supraphonic. It has an internal dampener on it. It has all of the tension rods on the bottom, which is cool, not on the top. No big deal. Okay, so as we all know, step number 1 is to strip this shell of all hardware, get it all off. That way we can start the cleaning process. Looking at this drum, there's a couple little pits right there. It's really minor. There's some tape, whatever, more tape here. That'll be easy to get off. Other than that, there's a couple imperfections, some scratches in the shell, things like that. But for a drum that was in a school setting, it's in really good shape. So we're gonna have to just take everything apart. Mind you, drums from this era, they do have these types of fasteners to them that the head does not have the screw indent in it. So you need a 1/4-inch socket to remove them. That's no big deal. So let's go ahead and strip this drum. And I'm a big fan of the snap process. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. So drum is taken completely apart, has 10 double-sided imperial lugs, triple flange hoops like we talked about. It's Ludwig's P83 throw-off, although it is missing the front plate for it, so had to get a replacement for that. That's no big deal. Here is the butt plate, P83 butt plate, or whichever one is usually of that era. No problem. Here's the internal dampener. The pieces of it are all over there. Anytime I have to take apart a drum, or any drum for that matter, if this is something you have to do and clean up, majority of the tools that you need are a screwdriver, one of these screwdrivers where you can adjust the head to be either a Phillips head or a flat head. These work wonders. And then this kit, it's a Husky 46-piece tool set. This is great because I have this in my bag for when I'm teaching, and the majority of the stuff I have to do with marching percussion or drums, anything like that, it has all the tools covered in here. I'll put a link to this kit in the description below. That way you can get one for yourself if that's something you need, but just carry that around with you and you'll have the majority of the tools you need. As a matter of fact, it even comes with some screwdriver heads that you can attach to this and not have to carry around an extra screwdriver like I have here. So now that that is all done, and like I said, the shell is in really good shape, so I just got to get the tape off of it, which should peel right off, and if not, we'll have to use something to get it off. But step number 1 is to clean everything, and we're just going to start out by wiping it all down with some water and Blue Dawn solution, and then wiping it down with just regular water, and then drying the shell off. Here we go. All right, so everything has been wiped down, and as you can see, we're getting more and more stuff on here because next step is clean the shell off with Brasso. Now, Brasso is my go-to, especially with chrome plated stuff, hardware, shells, because it is super easy to use. You don't have to apply a ton of pressure around the shell, and it cleans it up. Super easy for you. Now, some people say that, you know, Brasso has an abrasive, so it scratches up shells and stuff like that. At the end of the day, the shell already has that stuff, so, you know, just go with it, in my opinion. Once you apply it with a microfiber, take another microfiber to remove the excess residue. And there you go. Shell is done. Not bad for a quick once over. And now it's time to move on to the hoops and hardware. All right, so now that the shell has been cleaned off and the hoops, both the shell and the hoops I use Brasso just because it's a little bit easier. Now with the lugs, I like to use Never Dull by Eagle One, which is this box right here. And it's just a weighting pad. You rip it off and then you can go over each lug with it. And just like all of my other restoration videos, you see it does wonders and cleans up really nicely. I'm finishing up this 5th lug right here. So I'm about halfway through the lugs at the moment. Just to show you, the worst part about these Imperial lugs is because it's got those steps, a lot of stuff gets stuck right where those steps are, so you have to kind of go through and make sure that gets cleaned off. But compared to one that I just wiped down with Blue Dawn and water, you can see there's a little bit of sediment there, whereas with the one that I just polished using the Eagle One Never Dull, makes a big difference. So I'm going to continue with that process. You take the weighting pad, you wipe down the lug. Some of those areas, like I said, especially like where the steps are on the lug, you want to make sure that you get the weighting polish right in between those cracks and crevices. Clean it the best that you can. And you don't have to apply a ton of pressure or scrub per se. Just got to wipe it down. So we'll flip that around. Make sure that you get the front. Also the top and the bottom as well, because those are exposed the most to the elements. Plus grease that is applied for the tension rods and stuff, a lot of times that gets caked up on the top and the bottom. And then you take another microfiber towel and you wipe the lug off, remove any of that excess cleaner material that's on it, and there you go. That's that same lug that I just showed you before. It's all set. So I got 4 more lugs to go, and then we start putting this drum back together. All right, now the drum is all done component-wise, being clean, it's time to start putting this back together. So first step is just to secure the lugs. I myself like to just take a look, see what lugs look the nicest and put them up front. Now there is one lug in particular, this one, if the camera can pick it up, has some spider webbing down on the top and the bottom on each side. So that one is going to go on the back of the shell because that's going to be facing the drummer. It's going to be okay as far as like integrity and things like that. It's just a cosmetic thing. So go around, start every screw by hand, and then you can go around with the 1/4-inch socket and just make sure that everything is nice and tight. Also notice, since this is in fact a vintage drum, there are no gaskets that go behind the lugs like a modern day drum. So if you have a modern day Ludwig and you say to yourself, it just doesn't sound the same, some people recommend taking the gasket off of your lugs, and that kind of opens up the drum to give it a similar sound to the vintage ones. Give it a shot, see what happens. So once you get all these finger tight, you can go around with a 1/4-inch socket and just make sure that they're tight. You don't want to go all the way tight though, because that can break the boss off the lug. The boss is the little piece of the lug that goes through the shell and allows your screw to attach to it. And if those break off, that is not so fun, because then you have to get creative on getting them to re-secure. So let's go ahead and get this gasket and mounting plate back installed. All right, internal dampener is installed. I can move over butt plate, throw off, and keep going. All right, so everything is back on the drum. I got a new plate for this P83. The one thing is the fine-tune knob has a little bit of a bend in it. However, it still works, just a little bit of a nuisance, but no big deal, still functional. All the lugs are attached. Butt plate is attached. Internal dampener is attached as well. So next step is heads and hoops. Now the only thing is that there are 10 tension rods. There's only tension rods for one side of the drum. I took one out to secure the top hoop, and that means that I needed to get replacement tension rods, which is no big deal, just means that they're not all original on this drum. And a couple of these also are bent, like this one right here, which shouldn't really put on the drum, to be honest with you. Now, another thing with these hoops is that there is rust on some spots, like say right up here and there, which for a drum that is from the late 60s, it's something that you're going to expect, but it is what it is. Same thing here. You have a little bit of rust there, and I tried my best to clean it up. Unfortunately, with rust, you can get the coloration out, but you're not going to actually get the pitting that is caused by rust out, because what's happening is you have chrome plating, you have some kind of contaminant that is sitting on the chrome plating, and it starts to etch, and then that's when you start to get that bronze look to it. You can remove that bronze, which is surface rust, but you're still going to have all of that pitting that occurred from the contaminant kind of going in through the chrome plating. So is what it is, no big deal. Let's go ahead and get some hoops and heads on this, and let's do it in a snap. So in 3, 2, 1. Now, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to snap and put a drum together and clean up everything at the same time? Really wish I could do that in real life. Anyway, drum is assembled. Everything is fully functional, like say the throw off here, the fine tune knob. Like I said, even though it's slightly bent, it still works. So we have no issue there. We have butt plate is good. Internal dampener works just fine with that. And then as far as heads are concerned, I have a Remo Ambassador coated on the top and ambassador snare side on the bottom with a set of Canopus vintage wires because, you know, it's a vintage drum. So it is tuned to be in the lowest setting because, as you all know, with any of these snare drum demos that I do, I start out in the low tuning and work my way up to a high tuning. So let's go ahead and get this thing on the kit so we can hear what it sounds like. Oh, and if you are interested in seeing just maybe a more thorough, detailed version on how I clean, restore drums to get them back into a playing condition than what you just saw, I will put a link to a restoration playlist in the description. I'll also have it pop up so you can check that out if you would like to. So now, let's go ahead and get this onto the kit and let's hear what it sounds like. And there you have it. This drum is back to life, and you were able to hear it through a few different tunings. Now, one thing I do have to point out is that as I was putting the drum all back together, like I mentioned before, there were only 10 tension rods on the drum. One of those tension rods was in fact bent, so I had to replace that bent tension rod with another one that I had lying around from another late 60s Supraphonic restoration. So I put all of those tension rods on the bottom of the drum, but I didn't have any tension rods for the top of the drum. And rather than paying a premium for late 60s tension rods on Reverb or eBay, it just made sense to just buy new tension rods. So I placed the new tension rods on the top of the drum just because the way that I tune the drum, I'm usually adjusting and adapting the tuning of the top head, and I leave the bottom head the same throughout. Now, if you have any questions or you want to see how I tune the drum in real time, I do have a video on how I do that, and I've put it in the description below for you to check out. And if you have any other additional questions, maybe the gear that I am playing, or say you are looking to bring a drum that you have back to life and you are looking for specific components and don't know where to go, Drum Factory Direct is a really great site, might I add. Also, they're not paying me to say that. But if you have any questions on any of that, you can leave that in the comment section below, and I will try my best to answer them. Now, I would love to get your feedback on what you thought of this drum, so make sure that you leave that in the comment section below. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see some of the earlier videos from the Snare Saturday series, I've put a link to the playlist in the description below, and I'll also have it come up right here to make it a bit easier for you. Now, here is something that I'm going to do a little bit different that maybe some of you might be interested in. I'm going to sell this drum. And you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, you got it from Girls High and you brought it back to life and now you're going to sell it. Yeah, but the proceeds of the sale of this drum are going to be donated to Girls High. So because this drum is no longer being used but was purchased by the School District of Philadelphia, it just makes perfect sense that if we are to sell this drum, to give the money back to the district so Girls High can use it for their music program. So one of you gets the opportunity to get a beautiful late 60s Ludwig Supraphonic, and you get the opportunity to help out one of the schools within the School District of Philadelphia. Kind of a win-win if you ask me. So if you are interested in purchasing this drum, I put the link to purchase it in the description below. And for those of you who might be in the Philadelphia region, I am willing to meet with you to drop the drum off rather than having to pay for shipping. So if that's something that interests you, click that link, purchase this drum, get an amazing drum while helping out one of the music programs within the School District of Philadelphia. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. That way it makes it a little bit easier for others to find it. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on bringing back to life a vintage Ludwig Supraphonic from a school. And until next time, see you later.